Okay, I'm back at the bench for a minute because now that we're at this point, pass this way. Now that we're at this point, we have to do a little bit of math. The math is when I start turning down this end, where am I going to stop? I know that my first few passes are just going to take that end that's a little bigger. But somewhere in here, I've got to stop. So we're going to do a little bit of math. Everyone loves math. So if we look at our drawing, right here, and let me zoom in a little. There we go, I'll turn you. When we're finished, there should be a rounded end that is approximately exactly 375 or 375 thousandths of an inch. So we'll put that here, 0.375. Then we're going to have 3.5 inches that is going to be knurling showing. Add that in, 3.5, and we'll put a couple zeros to take the place. Right here, for that tapered section, add an 11-degree angle going from 650 down to 375. It should take 5/8 of an inch, or 0.625, 625 thousandths. You can do the math to verify that if you want. Add these all together. 5 and 5 is 0, carry the 1, 7, 8, 9, 10, 0, carry the 1, 4, 9, 15, 5, carry the 1, 4.5 inches. Finished dimension from here to here. But that's a nice rounded smooth end. We get a center drilled hole here to take care of. So what we got to do is measure how deep is that center drill hole. What we're going to do, take our piece, take our caliper. Remember, vernier caliper is also, let's zero this first, make sure we're right on. This end will stick out the depth gauge part, put it in our piece, hold on to it, slide that down till it touches, take it out. The depth of that hole is 373 thousandths. There's a 5 in there in the 10 thousandths place, so let's round it up, say 374. So, if we add to what we've already got, 0.374, 0 and 4 is 4, 0 and 7 is 7, 8. When we measure this, we've got to measure at least, and let me zoom in again so you can see my numbers, 4.8, that is an 8, 4.874 inches in from that end is the minimum we have to have here. So, zero this out, adjust it to that, and I'm going to be close. I may not be exactly on the 4.874, but we'll try. I'm going to make a little mark when I do, and then we're going to measure the other end. Go back a bit. There you go, 4.874. I'm going to make a little pencil mark there. Now, if I go one way or the other, it's a little bit longer because we can't go any shorter. Now, I've got a mark there. That's not going to go away for now. Pencil, if I just rubbed it, it would disappear. Now what I want to do is measure the other end. How long is it? Adjust this out. From my mark to the end, we are 4.752, if you can see that. All we need, if you look at the drawing, is 4 inches. So we got lots of extra room. So what I'm going to do, because I have lots, now that's 4.75, but we're going to have to subtract that from this end, which is going to be probably pretty close to the 374 we got there, but let's check it. Zero our caliper, 381. 381 from 474, we're still 4.4. So we still get lots. So where did our pencil mark go? I'm going to make a little mark just beyond that. Give us a little fudge room. So now we're going to put it back in the lathe, and this end is going to get turned down to our dimension of the skinny end, which is 375. First thing to know when you put this back in the lathe, slide back a little. You're going to be putting the knurled end in the chuck. Never leave that chuck key in there. Put it in, however far you need. Got my mark there. When you tighten it, don't super tighten this because you will crush the knurling. And that'll mess it up. You don't want that damaged at this point. So snug, don't kill it. We got to put our center back in here. So take that drill chuck out. Grab our live center. Put that in. Slide this up to our piece. Let's come this way, make sure we have enough travel. Rotate this back around because the last thing we were doing was facing on this machine. And we want our cutting tip to be able to reach the end. And we're good there. So lock that tailstock down. Snug that up. Lock it in place so it doesn't move. I'm going to snug that a little bit more because it moved when I tightened that tailstock. But again, I'm trying to be careful not to damage that. Okay. Tighten that in place. And we should be good to go to start turning this down to the smaller dimension. Now the first few passes at this end, I'm only going to stop right there because it's bigger there at the shoulder. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see what we're doing. We're almost there. Just double checking it here with the micrometer to see where we're at. Use the ratchet to set the right amount of tension on that. Pull it out, and we're at, doesn't really matter if you can see it right now because we're not at our measurement. Where are you? We're at 400 right now. So we still have 25 thousandths to go. So like we did before, I'm going to start the machine. I'm going to advance it in until I just touch off. Okay, I see it making a little sharp, little silver line. I come back down here to the end. Now, because I can't run the cutting tool right into the live center, we're starting in a little bit. But no worry, because remember, we got 0.37 or 38. It's going to come off the end of this yet. So, like we did before, I'm going to reset this to 0. There we go. I know we have to take off 25 thousandths. I could take it all in one cut, but I'm going to try and do it in 2 smaller cuts. First one, I'm going to take 10 thou. So if I advance the tool 10 thousandths, it's taking that amount off both sides. Should take 20 thousandths. Yeah. And then, there we go. Now I've slowed the feed speed back down again because we're almost at a finished cut. We want a smooth finish. Takes a little longer, but It looks a lot better when we're done. I am going to back out now to travel back because I don't want to leave a mark down it. We're very close to our dimensions. I'm going to measure it again just to make sure we were accurate. There is some lash in some of these old machines. This lathe is over 50 years old. And that leaves us at 377. Not a lot of material. 2,000 of an inch. So I do have a little bit of a mark there, so I'm going to come back beyond it to touch off. And I'm going to be very delicate here because we don't have very much to take off. So, and again, maybe touch off. Which is right there. I'll come to this end. And I'm going to try and add another 1,000. Yeah. This is just a skim cut. It's hardly touching. Well, let's check that. If you can see me adjusting, I'll try and get this hand back so you can see me adjusting it. So I'm using the ratchet and I'm going to pull it up and down. I should feel resistance to my pulling it up and down. Make sure you're straight. If you try and do this crooked, you're going to get a different measurement. So you bring it in. That's why I wiggle it up and down to make sure I'm straight. Should be right on there. This time I'm going to set the lock. Okay, if I turn this way, you can see it. And you can see we're right on 375. So we're right on for the small end. One thing that a couple people might wonder is, and I'm going to pick you right up and move you, at this end, if I have this cutting tool at an angle so that I can get in as close as I can at this end, as I travel down, when I stop, it starts to cut a bit of a taper at that end. Two ways to deal with that. One, I could just not worry about it, come right to my mark at the first one, finish right to where I want here, then readjust the cutting tool so that it's nice and straight to my piece. Here, actually, I'll loosen it up and show you. Rotate my cutting tool this way, come back, feed it in, and feed straight in and square up that shoulder. Even easier than doing that, I set it up, came down to where my mark was, and I went just a little bit beyond it. Just because from experience I know roughly how much of an angle that's going to leave. So I just came a little bit beyond that so that when I finish, the end of that taper is where I want it. Now, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to flip this around and actually cut the taper, the 11 degrees taper on here. And I'm going to get that all set up and show you that next. Next thing we're going to do, the next step in this process is going to be to cut the angle, or cut the taper here at this shoulder. If you remember from the drawing, it's 11 degrees that we want to set it to. How do we get an exact angle? If you look down here at the compound rest, it will rotate. And I drew a little line, or a little arrow, so you could maybe see that line. It was hard to pick up. I guess we can see it there a little closer. We're going to line up at that line the numbers on the base here, which are marked out in degrees. Now in this case, that is 90 degrees. We want it angled this way, so instead of counting up, we're going to count down. So 11 degrees before 90 would be, quick math test, 79. Now that's 90. That next one with the number is 75. The next longer line would be 80, so we want the line right there. I'm going to move you a little bit so you can see directly that we're lined up right at, actually a touch more that way, there we go. Lined up right at 89 degrees, or 11 degrees from 90. Then we're going to tighten this back down so it'll stay, and then I'll show you the rest. Okay, we're pretty close to set up. I'm going to move the cutting tool down so the point of it is right at the top of this shoulder. I'm going to go in with the cross feed till we're just about touching. Now when I start the machine, what I'm going to do is move back this way just a little touch, and I'm going to feed forward with the combination rest. And because it's only moving at 11 degrees, it starts an 11-degree taper. Come back to where I started, move this way a little bit more. What we're doing is each time starting that taper back a little bit further. And we're going to keep doing it until the end of that taper, the small end, is the same dimension as the skinny end of our hammer. Doesn't take a long time. And you can see that taper getting longer and longer each pass. Don't undercut it here. I'm going to stop it for a second so I can show you. By undercut, I mean don't dig into the dimension of this. You want to keep coming until there's basically zero transition, which I think we're almost at. This last one's just going to be a skim. And this time I'm feeding very slowly because I wanted a pretty good finish. But because we're doing it by hand, it's not going to be perfect the first time. We're going to have to clean up that shoulder. And I'm stopping just before we start to dig into that shaft. Back that out. Nice clean taper. Flip it around in the machine so we get our little end out here. Now we're going to take a lathe file and smooth out whatever little imperfections there are here right now. A little bit of marking on here from the machining, and there's just a couple of little imperfections here. We're not going to take a lot, we're just going to smooth out what's there. Make sure you don't run your knuckles into the chuck. Make sure any sleeves or anything aren't going to dangle and get caught. Take the lathe file, and just like before, we're going to use full strokes. Don't just sit it in one spot. All you're going to do is fill this spot, the file full of pins, and make an indentation. So again, you can see a little bit of chip falling. It's very fine. Tighten that up. Chatter away. There we go. And on this taper, what I'm going to do is hold the file at that same angle. And we're just going to smooth out any of those marks from machining it. And transition that a little bit. Once we have it all smoothed out with the file, we've got any lines, any defects that we can get out of it. It's as smooth as we can get it. We're going to do what we did before with the head. We're going to grab a piece of emery cloth. We're going to start with 150. Now, when we do this, I'll show you before I start the machine. When you have the emery cloth on here and this is spinning, you're just holding it tightly against the back side of it. It's rotating, it's going to keep passing by that, and you're going to polish it up. On the tapered part, you're going to hold it slightly tapered, right? Get it so that it will polish that tapered section. And just like we did with the head, you're going to start with the 150, then we're going to go to 240, 320. By the time we've done all 3 grits on that, this should be fairly shiny. Oh, the other thing to remember, when you're doing this, don't pinch down on this. Don't do this. Because what can happen is you pinch that, suddenly that can grab on that piece of emery cloth and want to pull it around. You're hooked to that, but in your hand. You don't want that to spin you down around with it. So don't put anything that's going to pinch that. It's going to make that emery cloth bite into your piece enough that it's going to twist. Always just, it's rubbing against the side of it. And then if anything happens, you can let go this side, let go that side, no problem. Whereas if you have it pinched really tightly here and it grabs, before you can let go, it's got your wrist torqued. Okay, let's give a demonstration. And again, make sure any sleeves are out of the way. Don't run your knuckles into the chuck. That would hurt. So I'm just moving back and forth. I've got a pretty good pressure on this emery cloth. And as I go back and forth, that's polishing, getting rid of, same as with the other thing, getting rid of any scratches from the previous step. I'm up here to the tapered part. If I keep it snug, it's going to follow that taper. And it'll probably get boring to watch me do this whole thing, but I'll keep you on here while we do the 150, and then I'll show you what it looks like when we're all done. I had to move back over here because the sun was too bright coming in that window. We're almost done. I'm on the 320 here now. And at this point, as I move back and forth, I'm trying to move fairly slowly in my back and forth so I don't put spiral type scratches down the length of this. Ideally, you want them just to go around the edge. And this is very fine, so it's going to make it extremely smooth and pretty close to a polished finish. But then we still have one more step we'll do at the end. And get it as good as we can here. Don't forget the tapered section. Now that looks pretty good. Pretty shiny, no big scratches. But at that point, we're done what we're going to do to clean it up on here. Next step, we have to go back to a little bit of math. We're going to figure out where we're going to part this off. We got to get rid of that hole on both ends yet, but we want to end up with the right length. First thing we're going to do is the handle end.